All right, beautiful. So it looks like we are live, and it's lovely once again to be able to come in with another one of these beautiful stories. I feel like we've had a little bit of a ritual going on over the last couple of months. Actually, on a Saturday we come in and we tell one of our beautiful conception stories, and today, Rachada and David, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and tell your story and to share, you know, your beautiful inspiration with us. So thank you for being here. We would love to know, as always, you know, like it's about you and your story and what you guys experienced on your journey, and tell us a little bit more about how it all unfolded for you.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, how are you?
I think just to kick off, we've had about a 3-year TTC, trying to conceive story. We kind of waited till we returned from being overseas, and we thought we'd just, you know, like everybody else, you kind of think it's going to happen quite quickly. And yeah, eventually it took us 3 years. And it just started as I was over 35 at the time. I was about 35, 36. And it, you know, we actually felt pregnant quite quickly, like within the first 6 months. So we're obviously delighted and excited. And I think while you still have it in the back of your mind that there could be a chance of something happening, you obviously just foresee everything in front of you. The entire future's laid out.
And everything was going.
It's amazing that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Say that again.
Everything was was going the way we think it would go. Like I think we got
planned.
pregnant. Everything going.
Yeah, it was
forward.
like clockwork. So you just think, everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
And then obviously the miscarriage just blindsided us. Our first miscarriage.
How many weeks were you in the first?
6 to 7
7 weeks. Yeah.
So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't late on or anything, but I think just because.
I think it's just as traumatic, really, though, you know, especially when, as you said, David, like when you get that positive pregnancy test, you think, wow, this is what's going to happen, right? It's like they're going to get married, they're going to, you know, like we already are over there. You know, so you've planned out the cot and the nursery and how it's going to look and all the things you're going to do, if it's a boy or a girl or whatever. So yeah, I think that it's never, whether it's 10 weeks or 7 weeks or 20 weeks. I mean, obviously the later in the pregnancy, the more traumatic it can be, but still I think that losing a baby at any point is a very challenging experience.
Reality check.
Exactly, it was a reality check. And had a natural miscarriage, and then we just thought we'll try again, and like as soon as we felt ready to. And I think a lot of friends and people always say to you, you know, those kind of, I don't know how much truth there is in it, but like, you know, you're always more fertile after you have a miscarriage, and
Old wives' tale.
Exactly.
Sadly.
It doesn't sound true, but you cling on.
You know, what's interesting about that, actually, Rachada, that you bring it up, it's funny because one of my courses in the last semester was reproductive epidemiology. And in reproductive epidemiology, the data shows that if you've had issues, whether it's inability to conceive, lengthened time to pregnancy, or even stillbirth, or any kind of miscarriage, you're actually more likely to have those issues recur. So, you know, people say this thing of like, oh, you're more fertile. It's actually not true. The reality is that there's a huge bias in the fact that most women only stop trying when they've had a positive pregnancy test or birth. Right. So, and generally it's a positive reproductive outcome. And so that's why people say that they may have had 8 miscarriages in between the first and the positive birth outcome, but that's what people focus on. It's the last event, you know, so that's why they say that, but it's actually the opposite. It's actually, it's an old wives' tale, and it's the opposite to that, which is actually true.
And that was our experience. We didn't fall pregnant again within the first few months or within even the first 6 months. It probably took us about another year. And that in itself was confusing to us. So because, you know, I was over 35, we knew that after 6 months of nothing happening, you should probably get a few tests and get yourself checked out. So we went to our GP, who did, you know, the basic tests, and nothing was revealed, nothing out of sorts. But then she did refer us on to like a specialist. It wasn't an IVF specialist, but more of like a fertility medical specialist. Maybe it was an I don't know. Anyway, and she did ask for a few more tests, and we got we got those done, and again, nothing was revealed. So I guess the answer was keep trying, and if nothing happens, IVF might be your answer. And then around this time, we moved from Brisbane to Sydney, and then David started a very stressful job. You want to say it?
So I moved with the company and I went to open up a hotel. But normally hotels like 2 to 3 months or more time to open. They gave us 6 weeks. So that was,
oh my God,
hour working a
that
day.
would be stressful.
Yeah, 20 hours working day, probably for 2 3 months, no days off. A lot of Diet Coke, a lot of sugar, no exercising, just
high stress.
High stress.
Yeah, we were actually living in the hotel, so making a baby was off the table for a good 3 to 6 months, to be honest. Obviously mentally it wasn't, but we just knew.
God, like getting sleep, it would have been almost off the table with that kind of schedule, let alone anything else.
So I guess, with all these different things happening in our lives, before you know it, it's like 2 years from trying to conceive to start. It just passes so quickly.
Yeah.
And you just go, wow, that's been 2 years and nothing has happened. So,
and isn't that interesting as well? Like, actually, you reminded me of something, because often people do exactly this. It's this whole thing of like, oh, next cycle is going to happen. But then the next cycle becomes the next 12 cycles. And they still have this idea of like, oh, just keep trying. And unfortunately, I'll give away here, David, I'm sorry to be the, like expose on the male side of the situation, but men sometimes tend to be a little bit way too laid back, actually, in terms of timing, because they think that, the media has put into our kind of minds that men can reproduce forever. And it's actually not true. There's lots of evidence and lots of research that shows that male fertility also declines after 45. But even though, you have those kind of sporadic cases where it happens, it becomes, again, the reality of how things are. And, as a result, what I typically see is this very prolonged delay of people just doing more of the same and, kind of going around in circles, which is not ideal when we're wanting to have, a situation where you complete a family, because most people want to have more than one child as well, as opposed to just having one child. So it's an important thing to take into consideration. But yeah, you've just reminded me of how, it's so easy for 1 month to become 12.
Exactly. And it's not to say that you're not feeling it every month. Everyone knows,
for sure.
like, that 2-week wait, and then you're like, I've got to wait another 2 weeks before we can kind of, start again. And you get your period every time. And it's just like mentally and emotionally, it's definitely a toll. And then when things like work and life get in the way, it does get exasperating, because you're like, my number one priority is this, but right this minute, I've got this other priority that's getting in the way. So yeah, 6 months becomes 2 years, just like that. And I think as a woman over 35 as well, like I literally could hear that huge biological clock ticking, which is
it's like a bomb.
Exactly. And I think also, because you don't get educated on this stuff at school, like you learn about like reproduction and periods and stuff, but you don't learn about fertility. And I think it's like, just like off a bit of a tangent, but I was actually really frustrated that I didn't know a lot of these things when I was in my 20s or my teens. It's like, there's only a certain number of days you can fall pregnant. This is what your cervical mucus means. After 35, it is much more difficult. It's not impossible, but it's more difficult. If we had known this in our early 20s, like from an educational point of view, I think we would have done things a lot differently.
Yeah, it's so fascinating that you say this, because right now we're going through, as preparing to run the clinical trial on female sexual satisfaction, we are doing so much reading around sexuality and public health, and looking at, one of the classes that I had recently this week was looking at sex education for young adults and teenagers and young adults. And what actually is given in sexual education at school is like, I remember my own sexual education at school. It's like, don't have sex, you'll get pregnant. If you get pregnant, you'll ruin your life. Exactly. Like literally, that was my takeaway message from high school. Like, if I get pregnant, it's going to ruin my life.
Crazy. And also GPs like offering the morning after pill, like so freely, like that in itself is like, oh, it's fine, I'll just take them.
I mean, these days, I think these days it's even over the counter. Like, you know what? Actually, this week, it shocked me. The UK has passed a law that essentially is going to see the oral contraceptive pill being sold over the counter without a prescription. Now, I read that and people were like, oh, this is amazing. And I'm thinking, well, it's amazing if you want to be infertile in your late 20s, 30s, 40s. But hey, at least I'll still be here. Like, oh my God, it's crazy. It really, it's the one type of thing that when it's so easy to get to know your body and understand your body. And like you said, you know, Rachada, it's this whole idea of, if you had been taught these things, you would have acted differently. These kids aren't going to be taught that the pill could impact your health, could impact your fertility. They're just going to take it. And then we're going to have to deal with the repercussions of this in 20 to 40 years down the track.
Yeah.
But you know, the beauty of
sad.
us having, like, on reflection now that we can look back, the beauty of having gone through all of these experiences means I'll be telling my daughter, you know, what the right way is and actually how to understand her own body, and that she actually doesn't need to go on the pill if she doesn't want to. There's other ways. And so I think that's a great generational kind of,
for sure. I mean, when you go through these difficult experiences, there's lots of learnings that come from it, isn't it? And I think that this is the thing, like when you went into it without knowing anything, it's like, oh my God, how do I figure this out? How do I, you know, and even from a male's perspective, right, David? Because like, how much of anything to do with fertility and women were you taught, you know, before actually going through the experience of infertility or miscarriage or any of these things? Like, it's very much a situation of, you know, it's like it's a trial and error. You kind of figure out as you go along. So yeah. So what else happened? I'm sorry that I keep interrupting. I just, you know, like there's so many things that when we're having this conversation, it's like, oh.
Exactly. So the next step was a GP in Sydney, who pretty much immediately referred us to, you know, IVF is your next best course of action. So I'm going to refer you to one of the best IVF doctors in Sydney. And then we met with her, and this is just like off to the side instinctively. It just didn't feel 100% right with me. Like just on a personal basis, I didn't gel with her 100%. But, you know, you've got that resounding confirmation from a GP that she's the best IVF doctor in Sydney. You're like, right, I'm just going to swallow all of my gut instinct and just go with it, because you just want to be helped. And I think also 2 years of infertility, you just need help wherever you can get it. And obviously it sounded like this was going to be our answer.
It sounded very promising.
Yeah.
We're going to get you pregnant. No way. Like it's everybody. Like
yeah,
everybody.
she was almost like saying that it was a guarantee.
Yeah, like it felt like guarantee.
In that very first meeting, it was like, yeah, I'll get you pregnant. Don't worry about anything. This is, you know, this is going to be your answer. Even before she'd even read any of, like, and you know, we've done quite a few of our own tests through GPs by this stage. She had barely read a thing. So already a lot of things weren't really sitting well with us, but we were willing to try. And obviously there's a lot of money involved as well. So all of your eggs are just all in this one big basket.
The metaphorical and the real ones.
Was like, we had done, you know, we'd obviously with her over a period of like a month or so or 2 months, we'd done sperm analyses and things, and we'd identified that there was low sperm, low XYZ on my side in terms of lining and things. So we're like, okay, she sounds like she knows what she's doing. But we did flag to her, look, David had been going through some medical issues. He's also been in a high stress environment, opening up the hotel. You know, could this be impacting or affecting his sperm count? And I
had like hot sit baths for like 2-3 months.
Yeah, he'd been having hot sit baths and all this, and she was like a flat out, no, nothing to do with it. This is probably a permanent situation for David. IVF is your best course of action. You know, I'm 99% sure we can't improve anything here.
And also because results keep coming like every second month or third month.
Yeah.
Kept getting better and better, like doubling every time.
So we kept asking, isn't that showing like an upward trend? Isn't that? And she just completely denied it. She goes, you know, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. I bet you next month it'll probably be down.
Like very,
which is insane now that we know so much more. So yeah, had the first IVF cycle, which resulted in 5 eggs collected, blah, blah, blah. We had 2 frozen, 1 fresh transfer. And we were just so hopeful. It was like, and also you felt like you were back in control a little bit, like you weren't anymore to this process. We were taking charge. And lo and behold, that first one, we fell pregnant. So you get that phone call, you're obviously so excited.
I'll catch it.
But we tried to emotionally, you know, not get ahead of ourselves too much because we already gone through a miscarriage. And then we went to the dating scan and full of excitement, really optimistic. And obviously we didn't get a heartbeat. So that was a second miscarriage. Again, around this was about 7 to 8 weeks now. So it was a silent miscarriage as well. So my body didn't really know that it had miscarried, and I just decided not to do a D&C and have a natural miscarriage because I thought it'd be like the first time round. So we went through that, and then around the same time, we also had like a few, like David's dad was ill, my dad was ill. So again, kind of life and things just obviously became bigger obstacles, and there were other priorities in our life. So getting pregnant again took a bit of a backseat, and unfortunately both our fathers passed away within a matter of 6 months of each other.
Oh my goodness.
Around the time, because David's from Belgium, we had to fly back and forth like 3 times in a span of 6 months between Belgium and Australia. We stayed there for a month. But funnily enough, obviously we're still seeing the same IVF doctor. So we went to her and said, should we put in a frozen embryo? And deep down, we were hoping we'd have some good news for the family because everything was obviously, you know, quite at that time. And she was totally optimistic. Let's go for it. I'm flying next week. Doesn't matter. Let's just put it in. The correlation between flying and an IVF implantation wasn't even mentioned, wasn't even on the table. And also the stress that we'd been going through wasn't even on the table. So I think, again, looking back, if we had known what we know now, we wouldn't have done another transfer. So anyway, that egg didn't take, so we had one more left. And during this time, like, I'm a bit of a control freak, so I was like reading voraciously.
No.
That's a yes.
The thing is, I'm trying to read out to Dave, and he just like nods one ear in, one ear out, you know, trying to.
No, I get it, but just.
Yeah, and I think also like it's you just get so consumed by reading everything that you just don't know where that answer's going to lie.
It's that whole idea, isn't it, that like at least if I'm doing something, I feel like I'm moving forward. But, you know, it's that diagram that I often show. I don't even know where it is, but it's like, you know, the couple that just keeps going around in circles, you know, and we think because of depending on where we are in that scenario, we're seeing a different view when we look out the window, but really we're actually just trajecting in that circle. And it's really quite a challenge because even, you know, I see this so often, and we may even have talked about it. People come to us, they're doing 80% of the work that's only going to give them 20% of a result, right? But because they're doing stuff, they feel like, you know, it's like sometimes people go into IVF, they know deep down that it's like, hang on, there has to be more. I need to prepare my body, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. But they're kind of like, no, this is it. This is going to be the thing. And because you then are given that go ahead and that, you know, reassertion that, okay, yes, it's going to be, you know, okay, you just go with it. And then you realize that, hang on a second, maybe I should have listened to myself and my own inner knowing. Absolutely. And my gut feeling. And, you know, because it's such a challenging journey that can be so emotional, and being objective about it can be really difficult.
Yeah.
Also, Rachada is this person who will not accept something until she understands. So if a doctor says something like why, she will ask why, and if the answer is that's it, you will look into.
Yeah, I mean,
it can't be just that's it. There has to be a reason behind.
The most frustrating term is unexplained infertility, because you know deep down that there has to be an answer. Like there is.
Exactly.
It's unexplained. Not willing to dig deeper.
Yeah.
That's the only reason it's unexplained.
You know, it's so funny, isn't it? Because that's exactly what we talk about all the time. It's like this whole idea of like, okay, well, what is it that we need to understand that we don't? Because if we try to fix a problem, you know, it's like, let's talk in terms of a hotel. You have a leak in a bathroom, right? And all of a sudden it's leaking in all the other bathrooms. You can go and fix the bathroom downstairs, but where is it coming from? What's happening? Why is it leaking? Is it the shower that's not, being waterproof properly, or is it really the toilet? Like and if we just go, oh, it's the leaking toilet, without actually really investigating and understanding, yeah, sure, we might remove that toilet, reseal it, and do whatever else, and still have a leak.
Yeah.
No.
Trying to fix a problem that we don't know we have, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally understand the frustration with that.
And then, due to all the prolific reading, we stumbled upon you. And
well, that was a moment.
Exactly. And you know what? Like, it was, I think, just from all the research and everything you'd felt to this point, and the whole frustration around our IVF doctor saying there's unexplained infertility and not really bothering to dig deeper, everything that you and the natural fertility program talks about, it doesn't make sense to not try to, uncover every single rock and cranny to try to find the answer. And I think as well, there was just a lot of truth around, what you offer. It was scientifically backed, sound research, rather than just, trust me, I'm a doctor. There's actually just proof in a lot of what you were sharing. So
you were very excited.
Yeah, we're
talking.
And also I think
it's
amazing for a man to say that, David. I mean, I'm excited that you were excited, like guys they don't usually say that. They're like, oh, do I really have to do this?
No, for me it's also about, like, I always want to stay positive, and if I get too deep in something or too emotional involved, sometimes I might struggle being positive for her. So I like to be like above the situation and just it's okay, and try to support whatever I can, without being too deep into the problem. Not always the best thing, but it helps for me work. So,
and I think
I
think what really resonated for me was a lot of the research and the science and the minor factors. It just made a lot of sense, but also the fact that it was a combination, like a holistic combination of like endocrinology, natural therapy.
There's a science and the self-care. Absolutely. Yeah.
And
this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize, it's not one thing versus the other. It's not, it's actually understanding what's going to be the best possible way for this couple. Because for every couple, there's a different situation. I've had people who have done 20 failed IVF cycles come to the program and conceive naturally after all those failed attempts. And I've had people that, previously conceived or, had different situations who didn't, who basically didn't get pregnant and needed to have IVF. And we, of course, are guiding them and supporting them along that journey as well. So it's a matter of actually optimizing the results of whatever way we try and get pregnant through. Because what happens is, what we know, and this is based on, again, epidemiological research and IVF data, they did a retrospective analysis of 178,000 patients going through IVF. They noted that on average, a couple needed 8 cycles to have 8 fully stimulated cycles in order to have close to an 80% live birth rate. Right. And what we see is we often, if we need an IVF cycle, we'll do 1 or 2 for our patients, and most of our patients conceive naturally and with a close to 80% live birth rate. Right. And so basically, typically without IVF, although in some cases IVF is still going to be utilized and is going to be used. But, it's about looking at, okay, how else can you optimize? Because it's not just the money. I mean, think about it. If you have to have 8 fully stimulated full price IVF cycles in order to have a baby, we're talking about a lot of cash, right? In order to make that happen. But it's not even just the money, because think about the impact and the cost on your health going through 8 fully stimulated cycles and all the drugs and all the, that entire process, the emotional component, the stress of it all. So, even to be able to halve the number of IVF cycles, but then be able to halve that again, in my opinion, is a massive win.
Well, exactly right. We had that 3rd frozen embryo, and already I was like, I don't want to go through the unknown again and
Doing the same
wasting
thing again,
and doing the
same
same
result.
thing and hoping for a different result. Exactly what you're saying. So we already like put the brakes on after 2 transfers and said, right, what else is there before we go again with the 3rd one? And that's when we stumbled across the Natural Fertility Challenge. We embarked on the challenge and leaned in hard. Like, it just made so much sense to us. And around the same time, funnily enough, I was reading like the Marie Kondo book. So everything was just coming together of like cleansing out the cupboards. And, you know, just
Let's bring joy into this whole situation.
exactly.
So I started working more often again.
Like, I was just in this whirlwind of like, this is the answer that like, and you know what? It wasn't about this is the answer that's going to give us a baby. It was, this is the answer that's going to help us get the closest we can possibly get, and knowing that we've done everything we possibly
Yes,
could.
Yeah, because it's about ensuring that you have no doubt
No regret.
that you have left nothing to chance and no stone unturned.
Exactly.
Right? Even if it doesn't happen, you know, like I have patients who either decide that they've done enough, that they don't want to do anymore, or they decide that, okay, you know, and because that's really what it comes down to. You know, we shared a story in this series recently, which actually I don't think is in the group that we're sharing now. It's in another group, but I'll share it in this group shortly. And Anne and Jeff, which you would know because there were patients in the clinic as well, they had a baby last year. And Anne, by the time she actually had a baby, she was 58 and Jeff was 62 or 63, right? And for them, they weren't too old. For them, that was exactly what they wanted and how they wanted. So the truth is that people are totally perfectly fine to draw their line wherever it is that they want to draw it. This day and age, though, we live in a time that if people want a baby, they absolutely can have one, if we do the things that are required in order to achieve that outcome. But the reality is that you know, people often get to a point where it's like, I've had enough. I don't want to do anymore. I don't want to try anymore. And that's also okay, but it's a choice. Right? And that's really what it comes down to as well. And sometimes the choice is, I want to know that I have done everything that I possibly could to conceive naturally. And if that doesn't happen, then at least I can close that chapter and move on with it. Some people say, okay, I want to know that I've done everything that I could naturally, and I will do IVF, I will do this, I will do whatever. And then they're happy. And most of them will walk away with a baby, but some won't. And that's a decision and a choice that we can all make. And I think that it's such a better place to come from, don't you think? Like, you know, where you feel that it's your choice and your decision, as opposed to you have no idea why it's not happening and you haven't done something to change it. And you kind of like, you know, feeling like you're a victim of the circumstance rather than driving it. So for you guys, I'm so happy that, you know, you had that mindset to begin with, which was, I want to know that I've done everything that I could, and at least then we know.
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of just after 7 months of the Natural Fertility Program, we'd been given the green light after the first 4 or 5 months. It was kind of still not happening for us naturally, and we had already revealed quite a few different medical things, like minor factors that were affecting our chances. I was then 37, coming up to 38. So with our practitioner, we just agreed that maybe an IVF cycle was our best course of action, especially if we wanted 2 children. And, you know, just not to, like, if we had waited longer, we possibly could have conceived naturally. But I think just the waiting longer just didn't fit in our equation at that point in time.
So we think like waiting longer might be 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and before you know it, you're born again. So
exactly.
And that's the thing that happens, you know, like sometimes we make these decisions as well based on the practicalities of what we envision for our families and what we envision for our lives. And that's perfectly fine because, you know, these are choices and decisions that we can make. So, you know, it's about, and look, you know, the thing is, what you said is also true, Rachada, and it's so funny, you know, the number of times where people go through, in fact, we had a baby be born this week that fits exactly this conversation that we're having right now, so similar to your story, except that then for her second, she conceived naturally without, you know, needing to do anything else, which it happens so often. So I'm still, you know, holding out my fingers crossed for you guys for the next one.
Also, like the program is quite, I wouldn't say challenging, but we went full on. So we did everything. And for me, also being chef, I couldn't do this, couldn't eat that, couldn't eat this, was quite difficult sometimes. So after 7 months, I'm like, let's do the IVF because like if I have to wait another
Then
6
at least I get a break.
at least I'm now perfect. I'm like,
Oh, David.
no, like I'm now 100% where I could be.
Yeah, like 7 months of gluten-free,
Gluten-free, dairy-free, so
like it was kind of like, okay.
I mean, my body is now perfect. I mean, not perfect, like best.
And you know, it's actually interesting that you say this too, because remember, you know, sometimes people get so very focused on this whole idea that they have to be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, they have to do everything perfect and perfectly, and you know, and I say this, but sometimes it doesn't quite, you know, like they don't quite hear it exactly, you know, which is this idea that there is a little bit of flexibility. You know, there is that 10% for the soul where you can go and have pizza. Like when I was doing my preconception, I had pizza every week.
Yeah.
Every week. It was my 10% for the soul.
Yeah.
2 meals in a week where I would eat whatever I wanted. I would always avoid fried food because fried food is highly toxic. I would always avoid alcohol, coffee, you know, but the rest, like, oh my God, pizza, I was there. It was like my, you know, my check-in. Like, yep, ding, you know. So the thing about it is that we want to have a little bit of inbuilt flexibility in there as well. But I get it, David. It can feel sometimes, and especially when you are in the midst of it, it can feel quite a challenge. You know, you can feel like, gosh, it takes over your whole life. But the truth is, let's be honest, children take over your whole
that's
life.
why, exactly.
Yeah, it's good practice. Yeah.
At least now I can have a drink afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my God, is this child ever going to go to bed so I can go have my wine?
So instead of doing that final frozen embryo transfer, we embarked on a new fresh cycle because we felt
Different
that
doctor.
with a different IVF doctor, but we just felt we were in tip-top shape. Let's try properly after knowing that we'd done 7 months of everything we could. We also embarked on a different IVF protocol with a different doctor. So everything kind of came together and we ended up getting double the number of eggs on this new protocol than we did the first cycle. We also did genetic testing for us just for our the reasons like we had miscarried, et cetera, so they were bespoke to us. And then we had like two genetically sound embryos. And one fascinating thing that I found fascinating was I was ready to transfer a fresh one, but on the advice of our practitioner and our IVF doctor, they did say, you know, maybe let's wait, give your body a rest for a month and let's go for a frozen transfer. And
that's something that often, you know, we've seen now the data is starting to come through because you see, interestingly, with IVF, it's not like you can actually do clinical trials where you can put one group on, you know, on a treatment protocol and the control group, you know, can just kind of like do nothing. And, you know, we see what the difference is between the two. It's apparently unethical to do a randomized clinical trial on humans, but epidemiological research, i.e. trialing as you go, is apparently ethical. So really what happens is that, you know, you have entire populations going through treatment and being tested upon retrospectively, because what happens is it's like, you know, we run these protocols and then basically after some time, we've had enough people who have gone through certain types of treatment that we can retrospectively analyze the results, the problems, the benefits and everything else. So we kind of learn almost like, you know, after the fact, you know, what's happening in terms of IVF and many other types of areas of medicine also work in this way. It's a little bit concerning to me, I'll be honest, because, you know, we will see generational impact after, you know, thousands and thousands and sometimes millions of people have undergone specific types of treatments. But what the evidence is now suggesting and showing in terms of positive pregnancy tests and live birth rates is that where, you know, particularly for women who have altered lining after the treatment, whether it's generally it's too thick, and that's why they actually say, let's just, you know, freeze the embryo, let's wait for the lining to go back to normal before we do a transfer, and we're seeing better results in doing that when the lining is a little bit still, you know, too active because of the drug stimulation. So that's one of the things that, you know, we're certainly seeing a whole lot more these days, and that's why that recommendation is essentially being given these days as well.
Yeah. Which was great, because already that just made us feel that we were making the best decisions possible all together as this big team of our practitioner with you and our IVF doctor. Like everyone was on the same page, which was great.
Even our GP was very like, she did say it was a lot of tests for us, but she was very helpful and understanding.
Yeah, when we had to undergo all the rigorous
Assessing for
tests.
the
We had the best GP and had the best experience, because a lot of them can be quite, I think, skeptical of all these tests that you're asked to do. So we had our frozen embryo transfer, which resulted in our little daughter. So it was amazing, and you can just imagine after 3 years we were ecstatic.
Oh, my darlings. What were you going to say, David?
Not skeptical. We took it again slowly, and
we paced
1 month, 2
ourselves.
months, 3 months before we really got
the pregnancy. But you know what? It was also our first heartbeat. We'd been pregnant twice before and never got to the heartbeat stage. So that in itself was already like hugs and high fives all around with our doctor. And I think our practitioner was the first person I called after that. Not even my mum. It was our practitioner.
It's like, oh my God.
Exactly. And then I think, you know, just for a lot of women out there as well, like I didn't tell a lot of people just because we had that experience in the past, and I was kind of protecting myself I didn't really breathe easy until after, you know, 20 weeks. And then it started to feel real. And I think, again, that kind of just shows how much of an emotional toll going up and down on this crazy roller coaster can be, that even once you're finally pregnant and you're past that, you know, the classic 12-week window, like I still didn't feel confident that it was going to happen. Like you already talked yourself out of it so many times. So we had little Evie, and we are hoping for a second one at some point. And, you know, now we just feel so much more confident and in control, and we know what to do to help our chances.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes such a difference, isn't it? And one of the things that we see, as I was mentioning before, is this kind of like continuous improvement, because the changes that you've made, many of the exposures that you had previously are changed and improved as a result of your new gained knowledge. So the body continues to optimize itself. And this is one of the reasons as to why I see, you know, subsequent pregnancies happen so much more easily, and often without the need for any intervention, because what happens is that, you know, the body has had the opportunity to reduce and to remove some of the exposures that were negatively impacting it biochemically. And then of course, you know, we have a different set of situations that unfold in the future. And so it's quite an important thing to realize that it's not about what you do this month that's going to make a difference to your fertility and to how your results will happen in the future. It's what you do consistently that makes all of the difference.
80% of the changes that we made, we still do now, even when we're not trying to conceive. Like they just stay with you, like the, you know, no chemicals in the house and low tox product options and having a water filter, and, you know, all these things just stick with us because they just make the most sense for our health generally.
Absolutely. And then of course, you know, when you have a baby, you want to make sure that your child has the best possible exposures, right? And that are being taken care of and all of that. And also think about it, once you have a baby, you're not going out drinking, partying, doing all of these things because you're like, oh my God, the next day I need to handle this whole crazy situation called a child. And thanks, Evie. And, you know, and so basically it's this whole situation where, you know, your lifestyle changes as a natural progression of becoming a parent. But I know that Evie has slept through this entire conversation, which is, oh my gosh, she's awake. Let's go bring our special guest, please. You know, it's so funny because as we were talking about before, we've had all sorts of things happen, you know, in these conversations, in these chats that we've been having with patients. And when they have kids already, as part of the program and everything else, it's so funny. We never know what's going to happen. You know, like, are they going to show up today? Are they going to come and say hello, or are they not? But then, of course, there are those days where you really want them to be there and they sleep through the whole thing.
I know. It's a nice analogy for the whole trying to conceive journey. You just don't know what to expect at all. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, you know, to a certain extent, it's the journey itself, isn't it? It's the whole idea, oh, look at this little princess. It's the whole idea that life just happens and we need to be able to manage it the best way we can. Oh, hello, Evie. Evie, I see all your photos on your mum's stories and you are so cute. Hello, gorgeous. How are you? Hi. It's so nice to finally meet you.
She's a bit out of it. Yeah.
She's like, this is exciting. I haven't talked to somebody on a screen before. Normally the people on the TV aren't talking to me. This lady's talking to me, yes. Hi, Evie. Oh, you are such a blessed little child.
Yeah. So
Thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing your beautiful, beautiful daughter with us. And, you know, it's so delightful to be a part of another beautiful family and to be able to be now in your lives forever as a result of this. So thank you. And
so thank you.
Such a pleasure. Any final words that you want to leave everyone with today?
5 words.
Oh, no, I said any final words.
Oh, 5 words. I said 5 words. How do you summarize all that in 5 words?
Yeah, I know, right? That would be pretty hard.
I think it's oh gosh, I think it's about taking back control. Like for me, that was it. And it's not about being a control freak and wanting to control every element, but it's not being a victim to your situation and understanding there's things that you can do that will make a difference despite a lot of doctors or, you know, Western medicine out there saying that there isn't. Like there definitely are things that you can do to improve your circumstance.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just to add to what you're saying, and, you know, probably to reiterate it and to put it into in different words, but, you know, with the same kind of intent. Hello, gorgeous. It's very much about taking charge of your education, isn't it? It's about taking charge of the things that you can do that can help to put you in a better situation, in a different situation, so that you can have a little one that's just as gorgeous.
Exactly.
So yeah, so guys, thank you. I am so grateful. David, thank you for being a part and to, you know, sharing your story, your part of the story as well. And, you know, I, as always, can't wait to catch up with you guys. And I look forward to meeting up again, hopefully soon after this whole COVID life is over. Bye, guys. Thank you so much. See you, Evie.
Bye.
See you, gorgeous.
Bye.
See you guys. Thank you. Bye for now.